This is Merchandise Mart. Transfer to Brown Line trains at Merchandise Mart. Doors closing.
Hi.
Hi.
Cheers. You're so far away.
Thank you. So welcome to the Wisendale Weekly Wrap-Up, where we talk about architecture, design, creativity, everything in between. Are we too far from each other?
And how your camo socks go with those neon shoes?
Yeah, no, I was thinking about going sockless, but I didn't do it. Yeah, so this week I have with me, go ahead, you can introduce yourself.
Valerie Jardin.
Now you have, nice. Valerie, so you've joined me second time on the podcast.
Second time, I'm honored.
Yeah, we're finally getting around to another full year. I think last time we were in an office space in a conference room. And
with carpet samples.
Carpet samples were the acoustical
backing.
Yeah.
Has it really been a year?
I think so.
Almost?
I think so, yeah. Almost a year.
That's crazy.
No, it's like maybe 10 months. But anyways, now we're in Allermuir.
We are.
And thank you to Elizabeth and team for hosting us in this beautiful showroom.
Thank you for the wine and the seat.
Yes. So a little bit about yourself. So why don't you go ahead and kick it off.
Kicking it off.
What did we talk about last year?
Oh, last year we talked a little bit about GRA, Government Regulatory Affairs. We talked about wellness and well-being. I think we even talked about some music festivals, which of course ties right into well-being and wellness, all that physical movement.
It does.
Happy music.
Yes.
Upbeats.
Yes. Well, so you went to the Deadmau5 concert. How was that?
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think that whole like technology integrated into experience, it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And,
oh, yeah.
That AV component was just amazing at Deadmau5. Am I backwards? I'm not backwards.
Yeah. Sorry.
But it was cool though. It was cube number 3.
Nice. Have you seen cube 1 and 2?
I have.
Has it what is the difference between cube 1 and cube 3?
Funny, I don't remember 1. I don't know what that says about me. But I remember 2, and 2 was massive. 3 is much smaller. But 3 moved. So there was like a screen that came out in front and then went behind, and the inside of it had a different light show from the outside of it, and it was a mesh. You could actually see through the cube. Even when it was in front of him, you could see him behind all the lights.
Interesting.
It was really cool.
Now, is he like a DJ? He DJs as well, right? But those are recorded sets, or I'm always curious.
He's a DJ. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think they
probably
just hit play and drink and smoke cigarettes. But you know what? It sounds good. So I don't know. Whatever.
Right.
That's all I do at home is hit play and
smoke cigarettes.
Well, not so much the cigarette part anymore. I quit that years ago.
What about the GRA? How's that been going?
Interesting. So we're coming up on sunset in a few years here. So we're getting on 18 months away. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of activity.
If we can explain, sorry, not to cut you off. If we can explain kind of everything, what GRA is, because I've been, with the millions of fans, people have been asking me to have my guests kind of explain more on things and not assume that
millions of fans. Now I'm nervous.
I know. Should be nervous. We have one sponsor right now, maybe 2 sponsors, but thank you.
Okay. So GRA stands for Government and Regulatory Affairs. And of course, when I'm talking about it, it's specific to interior design and our profession. So the state of Illinois has a Title Act, which means you have to sit for an exam after a certain amount of schooling and a certain amount of work experience. And then when you pass the exam, you can register with the state of Illinois. And then you can call yourself a registered interior designer. So that term is protected and is only available to people who've passed the exam.
Gotcha.
So every so many years, our Title Act sunsets, which basically means the state can look at it and go, Was it important that they had a registration? Was it not important?
Yeah.
And if they deem that it was not important, it goes away. And just like that, it means nothing. So the test in Illinois that we all studied for and took could potentially mean nothing to us here in the state if the state decided they weren't going to renew our Title Act. So every year we go down to Springfield and participate in what they call Capitol Day.
Yeah.
And we talk to our legislators, and
that's April.
It's always, it's usually always in the spring. We try very hard to get professionals down there, end up usually with a lot of students. But we need professionals to come out and show face and talk about the importance of regulating the design profession. And it's really just about elevating our career and taking our profession seriously. And
now, is Capitol Day... Is there anything else that's happening on Capitol Day when we're there? Are the interior design
in Springfield?
Yeah.
Typically, there's always stuff going on.
Okay.
There's always groups down there in some capacity. So when we're down there, there's a lot of other people on the hill marching around.
Yeah, and I know when I was on the IDA board, which you told me to be on.
I think I stood up and mandated it. It wasn't even like, hey, Felix, you want to be on the board? I was like, Felix, you're going to be on my board.
Yeah, right.
And this is your position.
Right.
And you did it. Thank you.
Yes, of course. It was a great experience. I tell everybody to get involved.
Drank the Kool-Aid.
Now, is the lobbyist the same person every time? Or every year? Not every time.
No.
I guess that was my first experience with lobbyists. Like, I've always heard about them, but I never really understood what they did back in the 80s or whenever I joined the IDA board. But
the 80s.
Now, is it the
born
same?
In the 80s?
Is it the same lobbyist every year, or does that change?
No, it's not. It's actually not. We did have the same lobbyist in Illinois for a while. I couldn't tell you years.
Okay.
But Louis was our lobbyist for a long time. They work for a fee.
Yeah,
we don't always have the money to pay them.
Yeah.
So I think that's been why they turn over. And then honestly, we don't have to pay a lobbyist if it's not a year that's really crucial.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so if the architects and other groups aren't attacking us for anything, we don't necessarily have to have somebody like that on staff, which technically we should, because it's always good to have a presence down there, but it just costs money. So, it's a bad thing. But our numbers are not that great. I would encourage everybody who has passed NCIDQ, which is our exam, to register with the state. Yeah. Because we only get about 29 new registrations every year.
Interesting.
And not everybody renews.
Yeah.
So our numbers aren't as good as they could be.
And Tom is now the IDA advocacy chair.
Spanier.
Spanier. And he's going to come on actually in July, hopefully, talk about advocacy.
And Laura Hollis from our office is also...
Laura Hollis
she's
is
on the GRA board.
Or
committee, I should say.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see kind of who takes over that role. And then hopefully I'm going to try to get someone on from AIA to talk about their kind of local chapter. I know John Hopkins, maybe is his name.
Maybe you can ask them why they hate us so much.
I will.
What did we ever do to you?
Right. And then you crushed it last year with the wellness stuff. I had a friend the other day call me about a CBD product that he's been trying to push, and he's been talking about wellness, and he's out in California. And he's like, I'm thinking about getting like this wellness package together and creating this wellness company. I'm like, dude, there's huge, like, I know it's a huge push right now in the commercial world as well as the like private residential side. So, yeah.
It's really sad that it is as popular as it is.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Right.
It's as popular as it is because we're all fucking miserable.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
True. Yeah, it's bad.
So I'm glad that it's picking up. And I've enjoyed my road since I wrote the white paper and started speaking and whatnot. I think it's been really interesting.
What was the white paper on?
So the white paper was on designing for happiness specifically, and how we can use published scientific facts in neuroscience and cognitive behavioral studies and things to that are, I don't know, built upon by design. You know? So things like color therapy, things like sensory design, and just a lot of different theories that mush together.
Mm-hmm. And you helped study that through MOOC?
Yeah. There's a massive online on-demand course, whatever they call it. UC Berkeley offers them. So I just finished the happiness. Well, the first one was the Science of Happiness. The second series that I took was actually 3 courses, but it was the Science of Happiness at Work. Mm-hmm. So that one starts to talk about, what makes people happy in the office. And it's funny, I mean, obviously space can play a role for sure, and there's a lot of different things that we can do as designers to encourage happiness and productivity and whatever else. But the course was specifically focused on what they called PERK. So it was purpose, engagement, responsibility, and kindness. And there's just a lot of research, which I thought kindness was probably the most interesting one, because there's a lot of research that says not just having people be kind to you makes you feel better, but being kind to others makes you feel better. And
seeing acts of kindness, I read the other day, makes you feel better.
Witnessing acts of kindness, for sure. Yeah. Because it makes you feel in touch with somebody. I had a horrible day yesterday, and when I got to the train station, I stopped and I bought both of my daughters a dozen roses. Nice. So that I could walk home and give them something, and it made me feel better.
Yeah, for sure. So with taking the following class, how do you lay out? Are you still kind of in the ideation stage of where you want to take that class and the following classes, or you're kind of just resetting right now because you did about 6 presentations, a couple lectures, and
I was all over the place. Center for Health Design, Chicago Ideas Week.
Yeah. How was that experience, by the way? Yes. So glad you mentioned it. That was crazy. Chicago Ideas Week, the best way I can explain it is a week in Chicago where a lot of different disciplines come in and talk about philanthropic type stuff.
Every topic that's current and impactful in our lives. Gotcha. It's not even just philanthropy. Yeah. It's everything.
So when you started, you had a panel, and how was that? Who did you have on the panel?
So it was cool. We partnered with Knoll. Nice. And a handful of other folks. So Clune actually helped us construct some of the rooms. So my white paper talks about wellness rooms specifically. I had to focus on one small little bite-sized topic. So focused on wellness rooms or mother's rooms or serenity rooms or whatever term you want to use. And then we built 2 of those in the Knoll showroom temporarily. So Clune helped with that. Chicago Lightworks chipped in, and Tree Towns graphics, they helped with some stuff. So there was a lot of really great people that chipped in and brought the rooms to life. And then as the actual event, we had a lovely moderator with a great smile. Might have been named Felix. Yeah. And then we had a panel. So there was somebody from Knoll on the panel, Jennifer Graham, myself, and then one of my clients who is living with some of those spaces, so Barb Rossi from Advanced Group. So the 3 of us sat on the panel and we chatted about, wellness in the workplace and what that looks like. And, Barb's actually a yoga instructor, so we went through some stretches that you could do seated and feel good. Nice. And there was an essential oil bar. So after we had our little panel where we gave them some information, answered some questions, then everybody broke up into 3 groups and they went through the essential oils, and they got to experience the 2 rooms. So, very cool. Yeah, it was a lot of good feedback, and ended up following up with a CEO from a behavioral health institution out in Skokie called Turning Point, and went out and spoke to her staff about the importance of implementing rooms like this for the employees, which was interesting because, of course, the first response from all of them was, we want these in our office for our clients. Yeah. And the CEO was actually saying, no, let's do this for us. And I thought that was really powerful.
Now, do the wellness rooms or health rooms work for, I guess, what type of business model? I guess it could be any business model, but I feel like if people are on an hourly like it may not work as well for that type of person? Or how would
it's always going to be a cultural thing,
yeah,
right?
like it's more of a cultural thing, right? So how do you suggest that cultures adapt these wellness rooms?
Well, first of all, we have to acknowledge that the happier the employee is, the harder they're going to work for us, right? So that doesn't mean putting something like that in is going to work for every situation. There's certainly companies that you have to be at your desk to make money or do your job, and wandering off to go take 10 minutes is not going to be approved.
Right,
I mean, that's just unfortunately the way world. My mom actually works in customer service for an airline and ends up like she has to clock out to go to the bathroom. So
really?
they only get like, I don't know, some ridiculous like 5 minutes a day, like
Does she
in
sit
an 8
in
hour
ergonomic
shift.
furniture?
What's that?
Does she sit in ergonomic furniture?
Not really. They don't take very good care of their employees.
Just a folding
I'm not going to
chair.
say the name of the company. They have bed bugs a lot too.
Oh, cooties. Got the bed cooties.
It's really not a good switch.
That's not good.
No.
That's not good.
But they have to clock in and out to go to the bathroom, and they literally get like 5 or 10 minutes a day in an 8 hour shift to go to the bathroom. So like if you're sick, like then you're stressed because I'm sick. Like how am I going to go do my shit?
Yeah. Literally. Yeah.
Because you just can't. And that's a horrible work environment, but it's true. It happens. It's out there. So
yeah.
Again, not going to be for everybody.
I read that I forgot what there was basically someone talking about how the work is changing and about how, the quote that stuck with me is that employees don't want toys, they want trust. Mm-hmm. Like you want trust as an employee. You want to trust me that I'm getting my work done to the best of my ability, regardless if my butt is in the seat or not, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And the culture, I think, is changing. I also read an article the other day about the shared economy and how that's changing everything, every workspace. Mm-hmm. But do you think the workday? I know we're making bold predictions now, but personally, I mean,
where's your crystal ball?
I know. I think the work days on Fridays might be a little bit more obsolete for. I
mean, think about it. Work days are obsolete.
Yeah.
I mean, you work whenever you have to, all the time.
Yeah, true.
And that's why we're all burnt out. Because there's not a solid start and stop anymore, or a hard start and stop anymore.
So then is that like changing the 40-hour week to just now not 40 hours, just getting tasks done?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Because anybody who's, if you're a salary employee, you're working, God only knows how many hours you're working, because I'm sure you're doing it when you get home.
Yeah.
You're checking email before you go to bed. You're checking email when you wake up in the morning.
Sunday,
your work day
Sunday getting prepped for the week.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Your work day is way longer. And we have a lot more knowledge workers than we ever did. So that's got a side effect to it. But
so getting back to the white paper in the second class, so you taking some time figuring out what you're going to be doing next. I mean, do you have any ideas as far as what we have this beautiful quote for those of you who can't see video. It says, take chances, step out of your comfort zone, be disruptive, lead with ideas, craft and design. This is how you will stay interesting. Mm-hmm. By surprising yourself, unsurprisingly, creative flair will strike you in everyday life. This is Allermuir. Wow, it's pretty deep, very deep on this conversation here. But where do you see the workplace going? I guess, did you explain that you're a workplace strategist? Did you say that?
No.
And what is a workplace strategist?
It's a little bit different for everybody.
Yeah.
It's an interesting conversation, workplace strategy, and I feel like whoever you talk to has a slightly different definition. I don't think there is one definition. And some people say there's, they don't see the value in it. Other people do. I think at the end of the day, it's the important first step of any kind of project. So before you put any pen to paper, it's a lot of alignment of culture and vision and goals and mission with
branding go into that as well.
All of it, and how it's working into the actual physical space and how people are going to be working. Mm-hmm. And it ties into change management and getting everybody on the same page, moving forward, and
What's
being excited.
Sorry, not to cut you off. What is change management? For people who don't know what change management is.
It's teaching people how to appreciate the changes they're about to experience. I mean, to put it in a really concise way.
Change.
It's to manage change. Look at that.
I don't know how much elaborate, Felix, I can make this.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's and for some companies it's really involved, and for other companies not so much. But
yeah,
if you have a culture that doesn't embrace change, you're going to need a lot more change management, right? You have to be able to show them and really kind of hold their hand and walk them through the process. And it starts early. It's not we're getting ready to move in 2 weeks, so now we're going to tell you some news. Like it starts at the beginning of the project, the beginning of the conversations about the project. So it's a long road, depending again on how much change management you're going to need. And
does a company have to be a certain size to
I don't think so.
Experience change management, or not change management, but I guess workplace strategy?
No, I don't think so. I think every company can benefit from it in some capacity.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of workplace strategy that's being done by the brokers, and it's very numbers focused. And so when I'm looking at it, of course, the numbers are very important. We need to know, how many people are you putting in the space, and how is the space going to support the numbers that you have, and what does your growth look like, and utilization rates and scenario planning, and all that stuff comes into play. But I also like to look at the well-being side of it, and how can we factor in some of these other elements. Do we want to do a WELL certification? Do we want to do a FitWell certification? Are there other things that we can work in that would allow you to have a space that works extra hard for you?
And what's the best way you can explain FitWell compared to WELL?
I don't know. They're both different certification systems. WELL is put out through USGBC, so the lead people, and then FitWell is more of a real estate driven, but it's not from the real estate world. It was actually created by the government. So they're just two different ways of looking at measuring well-being in the workplace. And it's like LEAD. It gives you a good checklist of things to go through, and you don't always have to or want to pay for the certification, but at least it gives you some guidelines to design by. And I think that's super important because it opens up the dialogue.
Nice. What else factors into workplace? I mean, what do you do personally, like as a creative to? I mean, you're traveling.
Tired.
Are you
tired?
What are you tired about?
What else do I do?
Right.
What else do I do that factors into what I do during the day?
Yeah, like what do you do to figure out about the workplace strategy? Like what else do you like? Obviously, the happiness, I mean, is a huge thing, and the MLOC is a huge thing. But like the shared economy, the amenities race that everybody keeps talking about, and buildings. I mean, is there a way that you think buildings are gonna apply that or take that?
Well, that's something we've been talking about. Is can we make, to go back to your question about what happens if the culture doesn't support it, can the building support it? Can it be an amenity that the building offers if the client was never going to build one for their employees?
Right.
But that, again, only works in, downtown high-rise situations where you have tenants inside of a building where amenities matter. So then it's what can you do to even put some stuff at a person's desk so that they get some therapy element while they're sitting at their desk if they can't get away from their desk. So I think there's a lot of different ways to apply it or do it. Lighting, access to daylighting, views, greenery, nature, all that stuff are elements that we can work in when we're planning that help with our well-being. So we just try and work all that stuff in terms of like, what am I doing to figure out other stuff? There's like a never-ending, what do they say?
Resource?
It's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
There's so much information out there, and the science journals I think are probably the most interesting to me. So there's John Hopkins is doing a lot of research on neuroaesthetics, and they have a whole lab dedicated to that. And, there's a lot of really interesting information coming out of them. My daughter just got accepted to Loyola University to
Congrats.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Taking donations.
You taking sponsors as well?
Taking sponsors.
I'm gonna take this opportunity to say that we're looking for sponsors. Wisendale and Valerie are looking for any type of sponsorship.
Anybody want to give a scholarship to Julia Jardin? Please let me know. Oh my gosh, Loyola,
so funny.
Breaking my bank. But she signed up to get her degree in cognitive behavioral neuroscience, and I'm just like, honey, 2 for 1.
Yeah.
Like, everything you learned, I'll pay for it, but you got to bring it home.
Exactly.
You got to bring it home to me. I want to know it. Yeah. And that's cool shit. Like, there's a lot of stuff coming out of the neuroscience field that is fascinating.
Yeah.
And the more we learn about the brain and how we process information and interacting with different things, how it affects us. You had a neuro
element to your white paper that you were trying to do as well, like or during the Chicago Ideas Week, where you put on the different, you put on the headset and you could read.
Oh yeah, we had a brainwave scanner.
Yeah, and what were the highlights? Like the left side of the brain or the back side of the brain? I think lit up more than the front. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was more reading different levels of activity, and there was different colors that the scanner would show on the screen to show which parts of the brain were lit up more than others, and it was all wavelength based, and would talk about if you were calm or like if you were engaged with something. So it was interesting because you'd see people go in these rooms and the colors would be going with the because they were fascinated by what they were seeing, which was the whole point of that room, actually. So that we didn't have the scanner in both rooms. It was only at one. And the one that we had it at was the room that was meant to induce awe. And awe is one of the most powerful positive emotions that we experience. And it has actual healing benefits to our bodies and stress levels and things. So that was the one that we were trying to prove that with having the headset at.
Yeah. We were talking about traveling earlier, and for those of you who don't know, Salone de Mobile de Salone, which is the I know, which is the Milan Design Week in Italy, which happens every April. Got rescheduled this year, 2020, but last year in 2019, was it 2019? Yeah, in 2019 they partnered with a furniture company. Their furniture company partnered with Google, and they created 3 rooms as well where you would wear wearables, and they had different settings that people could walk in, and then you could give your wearable to the to Google. Google's all about that data, right?
All about that data.
All about that data.
And that's tied directly to the neuroaesthetics.
Right.
Yeah.
And like data obviously goes into workplace strategy. I mean, how does that affect? I mean, I think you said the brokers care about the person as a number, but I mean, you're taking it almost to like a micro level where you're thinking about what the person does and that data, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And how they react to it.
And there's so many ways to get data. So it's about being smart about how to incorporate that data into an executable design. And I think that's where sometimes workplace strategy falls short, depending on who's doing it. And I'm not saying I'm an expert in every way, shape, or form.
Sure.
Because I'm still learning a lot too, as is everybody in this industry. But I've seen companies come to us and they say, well, we just did workplace strategy with XYZ broker company and here's our data. And they give you 75 pages, no exaggeration, of just raw numbers. And I've had clients go, what do we do with this? Like, we just paid a lot of money for this and I have no idea what it says, you know? And so that's when it's like, okay, well, let's get creative and let's look through this information and what is it really telling us? And okay, so these 3 pages just confirmed that, you know, you have 10-person conference rooms that are filled with 2 people 80% of the time, or whatever the information is, but you have to pull out that tangible information and repeat it in some type of executive summary or infographic or something, not 75 pages of data.
Yeah.
And so that's when you have this solid, concrete conversation that you can have with a client and really make change then. And they can't push back and say, well, why did we do that? And if they do, it's fine. You can point to it and say, this is why. Remember the data?
Yeah.
So it just gives you a more solid conversation with them when you're designing. But you got to work in all those other elements too. People aren't just numbers. Mm-hmm. And if you're using sensors to collect that data, or site observations, or surveys, especially with surveys, it's all personal reporting. I'm telling you how I feel, but I'm keeping in mind how I think you want me to feel. Mm. So there's that psychology of it too, of, are you telling me the truth? Right. Are you telling me what you think I want to hear?
Yeah.
So the art of asking the psychological safe question that's not going to have a lot of that gray area incorporated. There's an art to that. Mm-hmm. People out there are real good at it,
Interesting. But
you have to be able to sift through all of that stuff. And I just had a great conversation with somebody.
You need some more wine, by the way? Are you okay?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I just had a great conversation with somebody that was talking about unwritten rules.
Oh,
and how the best way to get kind of basically the truth out of people is to have them tell you a story about 2 or 3 things that is really important to their job and how they do it. And you'll very quickly understand, based on their story to you, you may find out right away, this is something that's really important for me to get my job done, but I'm running up against these obstacles because senior management doesn't see it as important.
So repeat that one more time. The best way to figure out unwritten rules is
the best way to figure out problems.
Problems, right? Which are
self-reported
unwritten rules.
Problems.
Correct. Is to ask what of the person?
Have them tell you a story.
About what they need to do at their job and
about
how to get it
2
done.
or 3 things that are really important to their job and how they accomplish those things. Mm-hmm. And it's through that storytelling that you can read between the lines. And you're not making stuff up. You're seeing the information come out, but they're starting to tell you what the culture is.
Right.
You'll start to understand if someone's micromanaging them, if they have their thumb on them, holding them down, or if they're reverse, they're lifting them up. You'll get that information really fast when they tell you the story, versus answering the question of, do you feel micromanaged? Well, I don't want to. Maybe yes, no, right? no, not at all. Who's seeing this? So not that anybody would ever ask that question, but that's the point of it. So I thought that was interesting though, because it was. There's a lot of different ways to get data, and I liked that it was a more open-ended question, because when you're talking about survey creation, you typically don't want the open-ended questions because they're harder to quantify and summarize. And in this case, they were saying the exact opposite. You want the open-ended question. You want the story because you'll get more out of it.
Yeah, I was talking to a few people, I would say, around the holidays, and I was asking them what are some of their unwritten rules at their job, and I don't think they really understood, because that is somewhat of a personal question. If you ask someone at their company, what is an unwritten rule? It's like, oh, well, this guy does this, or this girl does this and never does this. It is definitely more of a personal
but you can't even ask it that way. You can't say what's the unwritten rule at your company.
Right.
You have to ask them how they're doing their job. What does their day look like? And then you get that story, and then you find the unwritten rules.
Yeah.
You get to sleuth.
Interesting.
Scavenger hunt.
Interessante. And you're planning on traveling a little bit in a few weeks, months, or something like that?
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah.
Make coronavirus go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Where are you going to be going?
I surprised my daughters with a trip to Scotland, England, and Spain.
Huh. Are you any of those?
From an ethnicity standpoint?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I don't even know what nationality you are, so.
I am such a mutt.
Can
I don't even know. And my
question?
Kids are like a bigger mutt. Oh my God. I did my genealogy. I am.
Does that play a role into work cultures as well? I mean, where someone's from,
absolutely.
and right? How
Absolutely.
they're raised, and.
But kindness is universal. It doesn't matter where you're from. And giving people
True.
purpose and
True.
engaging people and respecting people, that goes across cultural boundaries.
Yeah.
And so that's something to keep in mind.
But I mean, you always hear people say, you know, everybody should work in the restaurant industry and experience that, and, which is something I agree. I agree with. But I'm saying, like, that's interesting, right? Like, if you hired someone that only worked in restaurant industries across the board, they would know that whoever walks in the door, you make hospitable, whatever it may be. You know what I'm saying?
It doesn't even have to be restaurant industries. It's customer
I'm just
service.
using it as an example.
I know, but it's customer service. And I think when you're talking about, you know, respect and teaching people respect, you know, the best way, science has even proven this, the best way to teach people to be compassionate and empathetic is to force them to interact with people that are not like them. And we unfortunately as a society have siloed ourselves in like groups. And it's unfortunate, and there is no education platform that says it's mandatory you know, in elementary school or junior high or middle school or high school that you have to do a term abroad or that you have to volunteer in a part of culture or society that's different than what you deal with every day. And so we continue to crank out babies and raise children and stay in our little bubbles. And it's making everybody less and less compassionate and a little bit more ignorant. And even though we have the internet, which you thought would have taken down boundaries everywhere and encouraged people to be, you know, reach across what they knew and learn about other cultures, they don't. And in fact, all it did was give everybody a platform to be, I don't know, seen as invisible, but be a bigger bigot. So it's an unfortunate circumstance, but you always have to, you got to go back to this early education and find a way to fix it. And that's the only way that I would see making it better, is if there was you have to do mandatory driver's ed. You know, why can't you do mandatory volunteer work? Some schools have it, but not everybody.
Yeah. Well, that all stemmed from traveling and having your kids travel and yeah.
Because I was laughing. I'm like, I'm finally going to get my kids out of the country and expose them to 3 different cultures.
Yeah, which is awesome.
And now I don't know if coronavirus is going to allow it.
Just this is maybe a question that you don't even know the answer to, but how in the interview process, when you're interviewing employees, like, or potential employees, like, how can you ask questions like that really make you understand who the employee is? I mean, I guess I should interview like an HR person. It goes back
to storytelling.
Yeah?
I think so. I think it has a lot to do with that. And I think it's funny when you have, like, just went through this not too long ago, but, you know, one of the candidates was kind of frowned upon by some of the folks because they talked too much. And I thought that was interesting. I'm like, don't we want people to be vocal? Don't we want to know that they can carry themselves well and have hold a conversation? And are they making eye contact? And I don't know. I thought it was an interesting negative comment. But
and does all of that reflect back on the role, right? Like, you wouldn't. Well, there's all these.
Sure. Trainings. I mean, if it's a subordinate, do you want them to talk that much?
Yes.
You know, like, I think yes, but apparently maybe not.
Yeah. Well, there's all these tests, right? There's the Gallup Strengths Finders. There's the DISC assessment. There's one that we took.
There's Myers-Briggs.
Myers-Briggs, and you know, how true are those things? Like, obviously it changes throughout every 3 to 5 years, but does that help with your workplace strategy too? I mean, literally, we ran through the exercise, and you know, when you look across the room at where you fall on the DISC assessment, everybody whose role that they're in, it really did kind of fit with that.
But strengths are different, and obviously that could be something that's an underlying issue with a culture.
Yeah.
Like, why is my culture not working? Well, because everybody employed here is a whatever personality and they don't get along with each other. You know, like you can do some deeper dive digging with those types of tests. But I mean, I think that the Myers-Briggs one is interesting to me. They're all very interesting to me. I mean, who doesn't love a good horoscope, right? That's kind of what it feels like.
I've never got my story or
never had your palm read?
No.
Oh,
I don't
I
believe
think I'm
in
supposed
that.
to have a long life.
I don't believe in that voodoo
A lot
shit.
of love, long life. You know.
I am supposed to go down to New Orleans next week, so hopefully
go get your palm read.
Get a little voodoo action going on down there.
You got to do a voodoo tour. I learned the history of voodoo when I was down there, and I thought that was super fascinating.
Really?
Yes.
That would be cool. It's Creole.
All comes from manipulation, and I love that New Orleans was founded on like criminals and prostitution. I don't know why. I just thought it was so fascinating to me. Yeah. Anyway, do a tour. It's cool.
Criminals and prostitution.
Learn.
Perfect.
Learn about criminals and prostitution and manipulation through voodoo. Yeah. Super awesome.
I might learn that involuntarily when I'm down there anyway. So.
Firsthand.
Right, firsthand. Exactly.
I also learned that it's like $50 and you can have a parade with just about any time.
The first band or second band or something like that it's called.
I don't know. Super cool.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to have that clause in their city. Just parades any day, every day for $50. What the hell were we just talking about? Myers-Briggs. I'm most interested in Myers-Briggs because it's a globally used test, and so it's used across many different cultures, and they collect that data globally. You can certainly get information about the U.S. versus other countries, but if you just look at the information globally, it's fascinating as they talk about introverts and extroverts as part of all those different 16 types that live within Myers-Briggs. And introverts tend to be more common than extroverts. And I think that's fascinating. Again, when you get down to design and how you're designing space, are we taking that into consideration? You know, and there's a lot of, again, books that have been written on introverts and extroverts, and Susan Cain with her quiet spaces and everything that research that she posted that have been used by furniture manufacturers and designers alike. But those are all things that we should be taking into consideration. And as a designer impacting space, where we spend 95% of our time indoors, that's all stuff that I take really seriously. And I think there's just never enough data that we can sink into our brain to help round out how we're doing space. And that's strategy for me at the end of the day.
I mean, we could keep going, but that sounds like a great way to end right there. People might have to replay that one back.
Done and done.
But any last words? Where can people follow you at, or is there any social that you want to plug?
Oh, I don't know. I have an Instagram. It's wide open. You can follow me there. I don't even know what my handle is. Valerie Lee 08, I think.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, and great catching up with you. I'll catch up with you next March. Back
annual. I love the annual review.
Yeah, March, April. So
I am really hyped about the next year and seeing where things go with both you and me.
Yes, me too.
And I think there are nothing but great things ahead of us.
Well, hey,
so
that's
cheers,
another one.
My dear.
Cheers. Thank you.
My wine is almost done. I will give you the last.
Your safety is important. If you observe unattended packages, vandalism, or suspicious activity, inform CTA personnel immediately.